Listen to me. You do not know me. In this building, you have never met me.
If anyone asks how you got this job, you got it through the agency. Anything else, you push that cart and you keep your mouth shut. You do not say my name. You do not look at me on rounds. You are the night custodian, I am the chief resident. And that is all we have ever been.
Nora.
Dr. Kerrigan. In this building, it is Dr. Kerrigan. Say you understand. I took this attending track because it was the best program in the state. I did not know you had applied to push a mop here. When I saw your name on the custodial roster, I almost transferred out. Do you understand what it does to me every night knowing you're 3 floors down?
I can leave. Say the word and I'm gone by morning. I didn't come here to be near you. I came here because it was the only place that would hire a man with my record, and I needed the work. I didn't know it was your hospital until I'd started.
You expect me to believe that?
No, he said. I stopped expecting you to believe anything I say a long time ago, but it's true. She looked at him for a long moment, and something moved behind her eyes and then closed. Stay if you need the work, but you stay invisible. That's the arrangement. You break it once in front of one person, and I will make sure you never work in a hospital again, not even with a mop. Are we clear? We're clear. She walked away down the bright hall in her white coat, and Silas Kerrigan stood a moment with his hands on the cart, and then he went back to work, because that was the arrangement, and he had agreed to it because a man who has lost the right to ask for anything takes what he is given. He mopped the corridor outside the surgical wing the way he did every night, and when he came to the place beneath the donor wall, the wall of polished brass plaques that thank the people who matter, he did not look up at it. He did not have to. He had it memorized. 3rd plaque from the left, 2nd row, the one for the Resident Teaching Award, 2 years running, Dr. Nora Kerrigan. He ran the mop under it, and in the wet shine of the floor he had just cleaned, the whole brass wall reflected back up at him, upside down, his daughter's name floating in the water at his feet. He stood over it a moment, then he wrung the mop and moved on, and his right hand went into the pocket of his gray custodial shirt and closed around a small metal coin, worn smooth, and he held it the way a drowning man holds a rope. He did that 100 times a shift, closing his hand around the coin. It was the only thing that had ever worked. In the early years, when the wanting was a live animal in his chest every hour of every day, a counselor had told him to carry something he could put his hand on, something that meant the count. And he had carried this same coin through 7 years of nights in this building, rubbing the number smooth. And every time the old thirst rose up out of the dark, it met his thumb on that worn 7 and went back down. Nobody had ever asked him what he kept in his pocket. Nobody looks in a janitor's pocket. That was the whole mercy of being invisible, and the whole loneliness of it at the same time. A steady hand isn't the one that never shook, it's the one that came back anyway. You would not have looked at him twice. That was the point of him, the way he had built himself over 11 years. Gray shirt, gray pants, a cart with a bad wheel, a man of 61 who kept his eyes down and his voice off and emptied the sharps containers and mopped up what the living leave behind. The residents walked past him, talking over his head about arterial bleeds and graft rejection, and he wiped the baseboards and said nothing, and none of them knew that the old man with the mop had once been the name they whispered in this very hospital when a chest came in that nobody else could open in time. There is a particular cruelty in cleaning a place you used to command. Every hallway held a version of him. The trauma bay, where he had run 100 codes. The scrub sinks, where he had stood at 2 in the morning with his forearms burning under the hot water, planning an incision. The observation gallery, which he did not walk past if he could take the long way around because he had stood on the wrong side of that glass once and he had never been able to look at it since. He mopped all of it. He mopped the floor of the life he used to have, and he did it without complaint, because he had decided a long time ago that this was exactly what he deserved, and the deciding had been the only thing that kept him sober through the first 3 years, when the deciding was all he had. Around 11:15, a gurney came fast through the corridor, a young man off a motorcycle, and a first-year resident was walking beside it reading the wrong thing off the chart. Left arm's the worst of it, the resident said. We'll get films of the forearm. Silas did not lift his head all the way. He was mopping. He spoke to the floor. Check the left chest, not the arm. The resident stopped. Excuse me? That bruise coming up under his collarbone. Silas nodded at it without pointing, the way you point at something you do not want to be seen pointing at. That's not road rash, that's seatbelt. A bruise blooming that fast under the clavicle is bleeding underneath it. The arm can wait an hour, the chest cannot. He's talking. He's got a pulse. His arm's the thing that's mangled. He's talking now. Ask him to take a deep breath and watch his face. Silas kept mopping. Go on. Ask him. The resident, half annoyed and half unsettled, leaned over the gurney. Sir, can you take a deep breath for me? The young man tried, and his face crumpled, and he grabbed at the right side of his chest and could not finish the breath. That's a rib driving into a lung, Silas said quietly. 2 of them, I'd guess, by where his hand went. The arm's going to still be broken in an hour. Whether he's alive to set it depends on what you do in the next 10 minutes. He looked at the floor. But you're the doctor. I'm just saying what I'd want somebody to check if it were mine. The resident looked at the boy's chest, and something in his face changed. And he called for a different set of films and moved faster. And he did not say thank you because you do not thank the janitor. He simply went, and he was right to go. And Silas Kerrigan went back to his mop. But Odessa Booker had been standing at the supply desk, and Odessa Booker had been a surgical nurse for 30 years, and she had heard the whole thing. She walked over to him, slow, the way you approach something you are not sure of. That was a good catch, she said. Most attendings would have missed it. I just push the cart, Silas said, not looking up. Sure you do. Des watched his hands wring the mop, the economy of them, the way the wrist turned. You know, I've worked this floor a long time. I remember a trauma man who used to talk to a room the way you just talked to that resident, quiet, never raised his voice, made everybody around him better without them noticing. She tilted her head. He had a bad year, about a decade back. I always wondered what happened to him. Silas said nothing. His hands had gone still on the mop. Anyway, Des straightened up. Good catch is all. You have yourself a quiet night. And she walked away. But she filed it away, the way you file away a thing that does not fit, because a man who reads an occult chest bleed off a bruise from 10 feet away while pushing a mop is not a man who has only ever pushed a mop. She just did not know yet what she was looking at. 2 floors up, Dr. Nora Kerrigan was doing what she did better than anyone on the night service, which was hold a chaotic board in her head and never let it show on her face. Bed 4 goes to CT now, not after the labs now. Bed 7, who ordered 2 units without typing him first. I want it fixed in the next 4 minutes. She moved down the hall like weather. Somebody tell me why the trauma bay isn't turned over yet. We've got inbounds, and a dirty bay is a dead patient waiting to happen. Housekeeping's backed up. They're short a shift, a nurse said. Then page the night custodian and get him up here. I don't care what floor he's on. She did not hear what she had just said. She did not let herself hear it. Sedgwick, you're with me. Dr. Wren Sedgwick fell into step beside her, 29 years old, and the only resident on the service who still smiled at 3 in the morning. She had a way of making the long nights survivable, and Nora, who did not let many people close, had let her close. You're doing the thing again, Wren said quietly. What thing? The thing where you run the whole floor, so you don't have to feel any of it. Wren said it gently, the way only a friend can say a true thing. You've been wound like a watch spring since you came on tonight. What happened? For 1 second, Nora almost told her, about the man with the mop, about the arrangement, about the name they shared, that she had spent 7 years scraping off herself like paint. Nothing happened, Nora said. Go check on bed 4. Nora, Wren caught her sleeve. 3 years we've been on this service together. I have watched you not flinch through things that put other residents in the stairwell crying. She held on until Nora stopped moving. And tonight you flinched at a mop bucket. So whatever it is, when this shift is over, you're going to sit down with me and a bad cup of coffee and you're going to tell me. Because that is what people who are almost family do. Something in Nora's face nearly gave way. Almost family, she said. Closest thing I've got my real one doesn't call, Wren smiled, and it was the smile that made the nights survivable. So you're stuck with me. Now what is it? After the shift, Nora said, and it was as close to yes as she ever came. I promise. After the shift, I'll tell you everything. She would not get the chance. That was the cruelty of it. The promise made at 11 at night to a friend who would be on a board by 1, and it was the reason that 6 hours later Nora Kerrigan would do the one thing on this earth she had sworn she would never do, because the person bleeding out was the one who had called her almost family. And that was when every pager on the floor went off at once, and the overhead voice, flat and mechanical, said the words that empty a hospital of everything except its training. Attention! Multiple casualty incident inbound. All available surgical staff to the emergency department. This is not a drill. A charter bus had gone off the interstate on the river bend and rolled twice down the embankment, and it had been most of the way full. They came in waves, the walking wounded first, then the ones on boards, then the ones the medics would not make eye contact with. The emergency department filled and then overflowed, and the triage tags came out, red and yellow and black, and Nora Kerrigan stood in the middle of it and sorted the savable from the waiting from the gone, which is the coldest arithmetic a young doctor ever learns. Down the hall, Silas kept mopping, because nobody had told him to stop, and because a man in a gray shirt moving through a disaster is invisible, and he saw things the way he always saw them, and he kept his mouth shut the way he had promised. He saw a resident miss a tension pneumothorax and catch it a beat too late. He saw a second resident order the wrong scan on a head injury and lose 4 minutes that a bleeding brain does not give back. He saw all of it and he said nothing because that was the arrangement, and every wrong call landed on him like a stone he was not allowed to lift. He saw the board fill up. 5 operating rooms in this hospital. He knew that number the way he knew his own pulse. 5 rooms, 5 tables, and he watched them light up one after another until every one of them was running, and the cases kept coming, and there was no 6th room, and there was no 6th surgeon, and a man who had spent 22 years in trauma knew exactly what that arithmetic meant for whoever came in next. He saw his daughter working past the edge of what any human being should be asked to do, and doing it well, and he let himself feel proud of her from behind a mop, which was the only place he was allowed to feel anything about her at all. And then, near 1 in the morning, he saw them bring in Wren Sedgwick on a board, and he saw the tag on her chest was red, going toward something worse, and he heard a medic say the words that stopped his heart. Doc rode out to the scene to help. Second rig lost its footing on the grade and caught her against the rail. She was helping load a kid when it happened. Silas had stopped mopping. He was looking at the young doctor on the board, the one who had smiled at him 3 nights ago and said good evening and meant it. The only person in the building besides his daughter who had ever treated him like a man. She was bleeding out inside, and the residents around her did not see it yet. He should have kept his mouth shut. That was the arrangement he had promised. He looked at Wren Sedgwick's chest rising and falling, and he saw it. The small, wrong thing, the way one side lagged the other, the way the belly was going tight and quiet. He set the mop against the wall, and he walked to the gurney, and he spoke. She's bleeding into her abdomen, and her chest is filling on the right. You're watching her arm and her scalp because they're loud, but the quiet things are what's killing her, and you have about 15 minutes before you can't get her back. A second-year resident looked up, offended. Sir, you need to step back behind the line. Then step behind me and look at what I'm looking at. Silas did not move. Right chest, feel it. It's tympanitic. It sounds like a drum because it's full of air that shouldn't be there. The resident hesitated. Silas kept his eyes on the girl on the board. And her pressure's dropping even though you're pouring fluid in. That means the fluid's going somewhere, and it's going into her belly. Now you can tell me to step back, or you can save the only doctor on this floor who's ever been decent to anybody. Your choice. Make it in the next 30 seconds. Odessa Booker was there now. She had crossed the whole department when she saw who was on the board. She put 2 fingers on Wren's neck and then on the tight, quiet belly, and her face went still. "He's right," Des said. "Get a surgeon now." The resident ran, and Odessa Booker turned and looked at the old custodian standing over the dying doctor, and she asked him the question in a low voice, just the 2 of them. "Who are you?" "I'm the man who mops the floor." "No." Des shook her head slowly. "I watched your hands just now. I've handed instruments to surgeons for 30 years, and I know the difference between a man who read that in a book and a man who's had his hands inside a chest. You did that 1,000 times. Who are you?" And before he could answer, the overhead voice called it out for the whole department to hear, the thing that turned the night from bad to impossible. "All operating rooms occupied. Repeat, all 5 ORs occupied. Trauma surgery is at capacity. 5 tables, 5 surgeons, and a 6th patient bleeding out on a board with no room and no one left to open her." Des did not let it go. She stepped in close to the old custodian, her voice down under the noise of the department. "Answer me. Right chest, tympanitic, occult belly bleed. You called all 3 before anyone touched her. A book doesn't teach that. Hands teach that. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and then I'm going to stop asking. What were you?" "Trauma," Silas said. It was the first time in 11 years he had said the word about himself, and it came out rough. Level 1 trauma surgeon, 22 years. Where? He looked up at the ceiling, in the direction of the surgical floor, in the direction of the wall of brass plaques 2 floors up. "Here," he said. "I trained in this building. I ran the trauma service in this building. There's a plaque on the 4th floor with my name filed off it, if you look close. They took it down 11 years ago and left the screw holes." Des went very still. "Kerrigan," she said slowly, reading it off the name stitched on his gray shirt, hearing it for the first time the way you hear a word you have known for years and suddenly understand. "Kerrigan, same as the chief. My God, she's yours." "Don't," Silas said. "Please. That's the one thing she asked me for. Don't say it." But it was already too late for the arrangement, because down the hall a woman was running toward them with a name in her mouth, and the name was Sedgwick. Nora Kerrigan came around the corner at a dead run, because someone had finally gotten to her with the words Sedgwick and red tag, and she stopped when she saw her best friend Gray on the board, and for 1 second the chief resident vanished, and there was just a woman looking at someone she loved. Then the chief came back, because it had to. "Status? BP's 70 over palp and dropping," Des said. "Belly's full. Right chest is down. She needs an OR and a trauma surgeon, and we are out of both." Then she goes on that table in the hybrid room, and I open her myself. "Nora," Des said her name carefully. "You're a chief resident. You have never done a solo trauma laparotomy on a crashing patient. If you open that belly and you can't find the bleeder in 90 seconds, she dies on the table while you look for it. You know that. Then get me Vance. Vance is elbow deep in a splenic rupture in room 2, and he cannot break scrub. There is no attending trauma surgeon in this building who is not already cutting." Des held her eyes. "There is no one, Nora." And Silas Kerrigan, standing 3 feet away in a gray custodial shirt, said quietly, "There's one." Nora turned, and for the first time in 7 years, in front of Odessa Booker and 2 residents and her dying friend, her father, looked her in the eye inside the walls of the hospital and broke the only rule she had given him. "Don't," she said, her voice finally cracked. "Don't you dare! Nora, you do not get to be him in here. You do not get to be that man in this building, not tonight, not ever." "Then let me be the janitor who happens to know that your friend has about 11 minutes. He kept his voice very low. "For her, only for her. You can hate me on the other side of this. I am asking you to hate me later." He held her eyes. "Right now there is a table, and there is Wren, and there is 1 pair of hands in this building that has done this exact thing 400 times. And you know it, because you spent your whole childhood watching them."
He's shaking.
Dr. Curtis Vance came out of room 2 with blood to his elbows and rage in his voice because someone had paged him the impossible, and he found his chief resident standing at a gurney with the night custodian. "Somebody wants to explain to me," Vance said, "why I'm being told a member of the custodial staff is being considered for a surgical field." "Because he's a surgeon," Nora said. "He was a surgeon." Vance had gone very cold. He turned to Silas. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Kerrigan. I was on staff when it happened." He let that sit a moment, and no one filled the silence. "You operated with a blood alcohol level over the legal limit, and a woman died on your table. The board pulled your license. There is not a court or a hospital in this country that will let you put a blade to a patient again. It does not matter how good you were. You lost the right." "I know what I lost," Silas said. "Then, you know, I cannot let you scrub in. If you touch that patient, I lose my license, this hospital loses its accreditation, and if she dies anyway, we have handed her family a lawsuit that ends this trauma center. I am not protecting a rule. I am protecting every patient who comes through that door after tonight." He looked almost sorry. "The answer is no." "Dr. Vance," Nora stepped in front of him. "She has 10 minutes. There is no room and no surgeon. What is your plan? Tell me your plan, and if it's better than mine, I'll take it." "My plan is that we do not hand a scalpel to a man who killed a patient drunk, Dr. Kerrigan, because that is the plan that lets this hospital still be open next week to save the next 1,000 people." He was not cruel. That was the terrible part. He believed it. "I am sorry about your friend. I am. But I have to think about more than one bed. One patient does not outweigh the trust of an entire community in this institution." He said the next part more quietly, and it was the truest thing he said all night. "That is the math I am paid to do. It is the hardest part of this job, and tonight it falls on me. And if it were your friend on that board, then I would want someone in my position to have the spine to say no anyway." He held her eyes. "The answer is no. Find another way." And he went back into room 2 because he had his own patient dying. And he believed with reason that he had just done the right thing. Nora stood in the corridor with 11 minutes turning into 10 and said, "Chance. There is no other way." Des said it quietly at her shoulder. "I've been doing this 30 years, Nora. I'm telling you what you already know." She waited until Nora looked at her. "That man opened more chests in this building than anyone on the wall of plaques. The one time it went wrong is the one time it will ever be remembered. And none of that changes the fact that he is the only person breathing in this hospital who can find the bleeder in your friend's belly in time. He killed my mother." Nora's voice broke all the way open now. "You want me to hand him a knife?" She could barely get the rest out. "He picked up a scalpel with vodka in his blood, and my mother went in for a routine gallbladder, and she never came out. I was 22 years old. I watched it through the glass of the observation gallery. I watched his hands shake. I watched them page the backup team too late." She turned on Des. "Do you understand what you are asking me to do?" Des did not flinch. "I do. I'm asking you to decide whether your friend dies for something your father did 11 years ago." Silas had heard all of it. He did not defend himself. He never had. "Everything she just said is true," he told Des. But he was looking at his daughter. "Every word. I did that. I have not touched a drop in 7 years, and it does not give me back 1 second of that morning." He took the worn coin out of his pocket and held it so Nora could see it. The 7 stamped into the metal. 11 years ago, I picked up a scalpel with alcohol still in my blood. My wife did not come off that table. My daughter watched it through the glass." His voice did not rise. "Being the man who mops this floor at night was never the punishment they gave me. It's the one I gave myself, because I decided a man who did that does not get to hold a blade again. I still believe that. I was ready to mop this floor until I died believing it." He set the coin on the edge of the gurney. "But that's my sentence, Nora. It was never supposed to be Wren's. She is not the one who should pay it." Nora Kerrigan looked at the coin. She looked at her friend going gray on the board. She looked at her father's hands, the hands from behind the glass. the hands she had spent 7 years refusing to remember. 10 minutes became 9. If I do this, she said slowly, and she was not talking to Des or to her father. She was talking to herself, working it out loud. I put a knife back in the hands that killed my mother. And if I don't do this, I stand here and I watch Wren die because I was too proud or too broken or too much of a coward to use the one thing that could have saved her. She looked up. There's no version of this where I get to keep my hands clean, is there? No, Silas said quietly. There isn't. I'm sorry. There's only the version where Wren lives and the version where she doesn't, and you're the only one who can pick. Don't talk to me about picking, her voice cut. You picked up a scalpel drunk. Do not stand there and tell me about impossible choices. You made yours with a bottle. You're right, he did not flinch. I'm not asking you to forgive that. I'm asking you to not let Wren pay for it. Those are different things, Nora. I need you to see that they're different things. And the chief resident made the only call the chief resident could make, and it cost her something that would never fully heal, and she made it anyway, because that is what the job is. Hybrid room! Now! She was already moving, and her voice was the level voice again, the frightening one, except now it was aimed at saving instead of sorting. Des, open the hybrid room and get me a laparotomy tray and 4 units on a rapid transfuser. I am the attending of record. I am supervising. Every decision is mine, and I will sign every line of it. She turned to her father as they ran. You are not scrubbing in as a surgeon. You have no license. You are scrubbing in as my hands, under my supervision, on my authority, on my patient. You do exactly what I say. Nora, the law... I know the law better than Vance does. A licensed physician can direct any pair of hands in an emergency when no alternative exists and the patient will die otherwise. I am the physician. You are the hands. They hit the doors of the hybrid room. So for tonight, and only tonight, and God help us both. She stopped. She made herself say it, the thing she had sworn she would never say inside these walls. You're my father, and you're the best trauma surgeon this hospital ever had. Now scrub in and save her. Yes, he is. He stopped at the door of the room. Everyone else went through, and the old man in the gray shirt stopped at the threshold, and his hand came up and gripped the frame, and he could not make his feet move. Because it was the room, not the same table, not the same night, but the same white light, the same smell, the same steel. And behind him on the far wall was the observation glass, the glass his daughter had stood behind at 22, watching her mother die, and every cell in his body was screaming. The thing it had screamed for 11 years, which was that a man like him does not get to walk back into this room. Silas, Des was at his side. Well, where are you? I'm in the gallery, he said, and his voice was not his own. It's 11 years ago. I can feel the vodka. I can feel my hands going, and I can't stop them, and Ellen is on the table, and I can't... Look at the coin. Nora was in front of him now, holding it up, the 7 catching the light. She had picked it up off the gurney. Her hand was shaking as badly as his. Look at it. 7 years. Those hands haven't had a drink in 7 years. The hands that are shaking right now are not those hands. Look at me. Whose hands are these tonight? I killed her, Nora. His voice broke completely. I stood right where you're standing, and I told myself I was fine. I told myself 1 wouldn't matter. And I picked up the blade, and your mother is dead because of what I told myself in a doorway just like this one. He looked at his own hands. What if I'm wrong again? What if I tell myself I'm steady and I'm not, and it's Wren this time? I can't. I can't do to you again what I... Listen to me. Nora took his face in both her hands, the way you do to a patient who is slipping, the way maybe he had once done to her when she was small. You were drunk that morning. That's why your hands shook. Not because you're weak, not because you're cursed, because there was alcohol in your blood, and there is not now. She held his eyes. 7 years of not, and you counted every day. That is the difference between that morning and this one. The shaking then had a reason. Tell me the reason it would shake now. A long, terrible silence. The monitor behind them screamed its falling note. There isn't one, Silas said. There isn't one. So look at the coin and tell me whose hands these are. Steady ones, Silas said. Whose? Mine, sober ones, mine. A steady hand isn't the one that never shook. Nora pressed the coin into his palm and closed his fingers over it. You told me that once when I was small, before everything. I never forgot it, even when I wanted to. Say the rest. It's the one that came back anyway. And Silas Kerrigan set the coin down on the instrument tray, face up, the 7 shining under the surgical lamp, so the whole room could see it. And he held his hands up into the light, and they did not shake. Scalpel, he said, and the surgeon came back into his voice like a man returning to a country he was exiled from. Wren, I know you can't hear me, but I need you to hold on. He bent close to her, and the room went quiet around him. We're going to breathe small and slow together, you and me, and I'm going to find this and I'm going to fix it. Des, I need suction, and I need it now. Nora, your hands are on the retractor, right here, and you do not move them until I say, everyone ready. Ready, Des said. Ready, Nora said, and her voice only shook a little. 10 blade. He held out his hand, and it was steady, and the blade came into it. Nora, eyes on the field, not on me. Tell me what you see when I open the fascia. Free blood. A lot of it. That's expected. Don't let the number scare you. The volume looks worse than it is. Suction desk, clear my field. More. Good. His hands moved with an economy that made the whole room go quiet. Nora, pack the upper quadrants, 4 laps, fast. We're going to isolate where it's coming from by where it fills back up first. Watch the gutters. Which side fills first? Left. Left fills first. Left it is. That's your spleen. That's almost always your spleen in a rollover. The belt catches the left side. Retract left. Harder. I need to see the pedicle. There. There. Splenic pedicle. Torn. That's your bleeder. That's been your bleeder the whole time. Silas's hands moved, and his voice stayed low and even and constant, the voice that keeps a room calm. Clamp. Good. Nora, watch the pressure. Tell me the number. 70, 72. Tell me when it turns. 10 seconds. The whole room held its breath with the girl on the table. 75, Nora said. 78. It's turning. It's turning. It's coming up. That's the bleeder controlled. A small sound went around the room. Silas did not look up. We are not done. Chest tube, right side. He nodded at his daughter without taking his eyes off the field. Des is going to hand you the tray, and Nora is going to place it, because Nora has placed 40 of them, and this is the 41st, and I am going to talk her through it, and it is going to be perfect, Nora. Your hands, not mine. I'm right here. Where do I go in? Nora said. Talk me through it. 5th space, mid-axillary, same as everyone you've placed, except this time your father's standing next to you instead of an attending who never taught you anything worth keeping. A breath. Feel the top of the rib. Never under it. The vessels run under it. You know this. Over the rib. Now one motion into the space, and you'll feel the pop, and you'll hear the air. There was a soft rush of air. Wren's chest on the monitor began to fill and lift on the right, evenly now, matching the left. That's the lung, Silas said quietly. That's your lung coming back up. That's perfect. That's the best chest tube I've ever seen placed, and I've seen a few. Huh. Behind the observation glass, unseen, Dr. Vance had come to watch because someone had told him what was happening, and he had broken scrub the second his own patient was closed, ready to stop it. He did not stop it. He watched. And he was not the only one who understood what that glass meant. Nora, gowned now at the table, had glanced up once when they wheeled Wren in, one involuntary glance at the observation gallery on the far wall, and she had felt the whole weight of 11 years land on her at once, because that was the glass. That was the exact pain she had stood behind at 22, watching her mother on a table just like this one, watching her father's hands shake, watching the backup team page too late, the same glass, the same lamp, and now the same man in the same room, holding a blade over someone she loved. She made herself look back down at the field, and she made herself watch her father's hands instead of remembering them, and for the first time in 11 years, the two pictures did not match because the hands in front of her did not shake. They moved like water finding the low ground, sure and unhurried, and she understood in her body what she had refused to understand in her heart. which was that the man behind the glass 11 years ago and the man beside her now were not the same man, and the difference between them was 7 years long and stamped into a coin on the tray. He watched the old custodian open the abdomen with 3 clean strokes, no wasted motion, and he watched him go straight to the source the way a man goes to a room in his own house in the dark. He watched him find the torn splenic pedicle and clamp it, and he watched the pressure turn on the monitor and start to climb. And he watched the old man never once raise his voice. And there, under the lamp, the thing happened that nobody in that room would ever forget. The father talked, and the daughter's hands moved, and the two of them, who had not been in a room together in 7 years, took a chest tube tray and a dying friend and worked as one pair of hands and one voice, and the right lung came back up, and the girl on the table breathed. Behind the glass, Curtis Vance lowered his head. Was she there? Wren Sedgwick lived. She spent 9 days in the unit, and she woke on the second one, and the first thing she saw was Nora asleep in the chair beside her. And the second thing she saw through the door was the old custodian mopping the hall outside her room because he had asked to be assigned to her floor, and no one had the heart to say no. Hey, Wren said when Nora stirred. Her voice was a rasp. You look terrible. You almost died, Nora said. I'm allowed to look terrible. Who opened me up? Wren had read her own chart, the way doctors do the second they can focus their eyes, and she had found a name on it she did not expect. The op note has your name as attending, but it says the procedure was performed by a surgical assist unnamed. Nora, who were the hands? Nora was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked through the door at the old man with the mop, and she made a decision she had spent 7 years refusing to make. That man out there, she said, the custodian. His name is Silas Kerrigan. He was one of the best trauma surgeons this hospital ever had before he lost everything. She took a breath. He's my father, and he saved your life on a table with no room and no license, and his whole past in the room with him. She made herself hold Wren's eyes. I need you to be the first person I ever say that to out loud in this building, because I've spent 7 years pretending he was a stranger, and I'm done. Wren looked through the door at the old man and then back at her friend, and she smiled the smile that made the nights survivable. Almost family, Wren said softly. I told you. Go bring your dad in here. I want to say good evening to him properly this time. There was an inquiry. Because there is always an inquiry, Dr. Curtis Vance sat before the board that he had invoked the night of, and he did not say what everyone expected him to say. He told the truth. The custodial employee acted as the hands of the attending of record under her direct supervision in a mass casualty event in which every operating room and every trauma surgeon in the facility was committed and the patient had minutes to live. Under those exact conditions, the emergency doctrine applies. He looked at the board. I spent that night defending a rule. Dr. Kerrigan spent it saving a life the rule would have cost us. If you are looking for someone to discipline, discipline me for taking 4 minutes to understand which of those two things the rule was actually for. The board reviewed the deaths that night, 5 operating rooms for a bus that put 19 people on the ground, and what came out of it was not a punishment. It was a finding, and the finding did not point at the man who had mopped the floor. It pointed at the floor itself. A regional hospital with 5 operating rooms cannot absorb a mass casualty, and the number of tables, not the man who read the bleeding between them, was what had nearly killed Wren Sedgwick. The review traced it back through the night hour by hour, and every branch of it led to the same root, which was that when the 6th patient came through the door, there was no 6th room, and no policy in the binder had ever answered the question of what a doctor is supposed to do in the 90 seconds after that. They funded a 6th room. They rewrote the mass casualty protocol. They called it a systems failure, which is the truest thing a board ever says, because it means the wall was wrong, not the man who was standing at it when it broke. Silas Kerrigan did not get his license back. That is not how it works, and he never asked for it, because he still believed the sentence was his to carry. But something had changed, and it had changed in the only place that mattered. Nora found him in this corridor beneath the donor wall a week later, mopping, the way he did every night, beneath the brass plaque with her name on it. She stood there a while before he noticed her. When he looked up, he reached automatically for the coin in his pocket, the old reflex, and found it gone. I have it, Nora said. She held it up. 7 years, stamped in worn metal. The coin he had set face up on the tray under the light so a whole room could see who he was. I looked it up, she said. 7 years. You started counting 3 years after. It took you 3 years to stop, and then you never started again. And you did all of it alone, in a room, mopping a floor under my name. And you never once told me because you thought you didn't have the right to. Her voice was not level now. She had stopped trying to keep it level. You let me hate you for 7 years, and you never once said the one thing that might have made me stop, which is that you'd spent every day of it trying to become someone who deserved to be forgiven. I didn't tell you, Silas said, because you deserved to hate me. Both things were true. They still are. Why did you take this job? She had wanted to ask it for a week. Of every hospital in the country, why here, under my name, where you'd have to watch me walk past you every night and pretend you were nothing? Because this is where it happened, he said simply. This is the building where I did it. He set the mop against the wall. For a moment he looked down the corridor, at the doors of the surgical wing, at a life he used to have. I didn't come here to be near you, Nora. I told you that, and it was true. But I won't pretend I didn't know what it would mean to mop these floors. He was quiet a moment. A man should serve his sentence in the place where he earned it. I earned it here, so I came here to earn it back one night at a time, and I never expected the earning to be worth anything to anybody but me. It was worth Wren's life. That was you, he said. You made that call. I just held the knife you handed me. I know. She closed her hand around the coin. I'm not telling you it's fixed. My mother is still gone, and you're still the reason, and none of tonight changes the morning behind the glass. She looked at him, at the man behind the mop, seeing him for the first time in 7 years. But you found the bleeder in 11 minutes. You talked me through the best chest tube I've ever placed, and you did it stone sober with your whole life on the table for a girl who once said good evening to you when nobody else would. She held the coin back out to him. Keep counting. I want to know the number. From now on, I want to know the number. Silas Kerrigan took the coin from his daughter's hand, and for the first time in 11 years, in the hospital where he had lost everything, someone who knew exactly what he had done looked at him and did not look away. A steady hand isn't the one that never shook, he said. It's the one that came back anyway, said his daughter. I know. I'm a surgeon. I had a good teacher a long time ago before he forgot he was one. He didn't forget, Silas said. He just decided he wasn't allowed to be one anymore. Then undo it. Nora's voice was rough. Not the license. I can't give you that back, and you wouldn't take it. But the rest of it, the part where you decided you weren't allowed to be my father in this building. I'm undoing that one for both of us, starting tonight. Do you understand me? I understand, he said. And this time the words did not mean what they had meant 6 hours earlier in a dark corridor. This time they meant the opposite of everything they had meant then. He went back to his mop. She went back to her floor. Nothing was fixed and everything was different, which is the only kind of forgiveness that is real, the kind you have to keep choosing, one counted day at a time. Above them on the wall, the brass plaque caught the light, and in the wet shine of the floor he had just cleaned, 2 names floated now instead of one, the same last name, a father and a daughter, side by side in the water, where anyone walking those halls at night could have looked down and seen them if they only knew how to read what they were looking at. Drop a comment and tell me the moment you knew the man with the mop was going to pick up that scalpel, whatever it cost him.